Welcome everybody to the December 16th, 2021 meeting of the Chatham Township Committee. We had an executive session at 6:30, and at that point, Mr. LeConte confirmed that adequate notice was given. And we had our roll call. And now I would ask you to join me for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next up we have our approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Can I get a second? Oh,
Just
did I need
for
you to read that one?
the library presentation is going to get moved to sometime next month.
Okay, so it's edited, the library presentation will not be taking place tonight, okay.
Now, who's it that made the motion? Was that Kathy?
Yeah.
Okay, we had a motion and a second? Okay, all in favor? Is it?
Aye.
Recording in progress.
That was me, sorry.
Okay. Okay. First up on the agenda, we have a proclamation. And first I have to see if she's here. Is Riley Kelly in the room? I saw two young people before and they...
Oh. What is it?
Riley Kelly Day. Okay.
Just hold on that for a moment.
That's fine, we'll push it off.
Yeah, apologies. Couple minutes.
Okay, moving on. Well, unfortunately, when she gets here, she's going to have to listen to me drone on with my mayor's message, but we'll move forward. Okay, I wanted to start out by thanking our Chatham Township and Chatham Borough residents for their generosity this holiday season. I ran a regift drive for an elementary school in Newark so that the children could select holiday gift items to give their parents. The response from our community was overwhelming. Residents donated everything from gift wrap, home goods, holiday items, to jewelry, clothing, skincare, and so much more. It was a wonderful success, and I expect your donations will bring joy this holiday season to many children and to their families. Residents also continue to give generously to the Chatham United Methodist Church Food Pantry and to their weekly food drive and to the Helping Hands gift card drive. The pantry and food distribution have operated for over 1.5 years during the pandemic, and there is still a need as cars turn up every week for fresh produce and pantry items. Thank you for your continued support of those in our community who are dealing with food insecurity. There's another food drive this Wednesday before the holidays. You can find out more information about the food drive, the pantry, and Chatham Helping Hands at chathamumc.com. If 2020 was a year that everything shut down, 2021 has been about cautionary resilience and recovery. While we have all enjoyed a return to some kind of normalcy, COVID continues to wreak havoc. In the township, our weekly case average during the fall was about 8 to 10 cases a week. In the 2 weeks since Thanksgiving, there have been 65 cases reported in the township. And Morris County has moved from a moderate Cali score to a high score, the Cali score measuring the rate of virus transmission. While Chatham Township has a high vaccination rate for adults over 18, boosters are recommended. As I mentioned in our last meeting, the NJ Department of Health cited veteran studies that showed the vaccine's effectiveness in preventing illness declined over a 5-month testing period. Thankfully, the vaccine's performance in preventing death was still strong, but there is a lot of ground between a positive test result and death, including hospitalization and long COVID. The virus isn't a problem until it is a problem. So get your vaccination and get your booster. You can search for a vaccine appointment at covid19.nj.gov. Thankfully, a return to normalcy means recovery from a budgeting perspective. I want to thank our Township Administrator, our CFO, and our department heads for holding a tight rein on the budgets over the past 2 years. Our Township budgets have had the double whammy of increased expense due to the implementation of our affordable housing obligation and a sizable structured debt service payment, coupled with a loss of revenue in 2020 due to COVID. Our Township Administrator and CFO kept a tight rein on expenses and generated additional ongoing savings through renegotiated contracts with the MUA Recycling and with health services. On the revenue side this year, an increase in construction fee revenue and in colony membership fees, as well as an increase in unanticipated revenue, will also help to build surplus and to hopefully alleviate budget pressure for 2022. Our Township professionals, along with our Open Space and Environmental Commission volunteers, also had great success pursuing grant funding for road repaving, sidewalk design to move forward the Safe Streets to School grants, the Hillside Avenue Trail, electric vehicle charging stations, the potential acquisition of open space on Southern Boulevard, and a LEAP grant to research opportunities for equipment sharing. I'd like to thank our professional staff, our administration, and the Township Committee, past and present, for all their work in securing our final judgment of compliance in our third round affordable housing. It's been a bit of a roller coaster for our staff, for our committee, and for our community, but the Township's move to put 100% municipally sponsored rental units at 522 Southern Boulevard is the right answer for our residents, for our businesses, for the families who will move into the new apartments, and for the veterans who will receive placement priority for 25% of the units. The move to develop 3 single-family homes for the adult disabled not only saved money and housing density, it serves an important need for our broader community. I'd also like to thank our emergency services professionals and all our community volunteers, our emergency medical services, fire department, and our Township Administrative Board and subcommittee volunteers for all their time and effort for the benefit of our Township residents. In addition to all the countless hours spent on the day-to-day in these various organizations, our police department obtained a coveted second accreditation from the New Jersey State Association of Chiefs of Police. Our Volunteer Environmental Commission worked 2 years to obtain a Sustainable Jersey Silver level certification. And as mentioned before, both the Volunteer Environmental Commission and Open Space Committee were instrumental in obtaining grant funding. Our volunteers are a cornerstone to our success as a community, and I thank you all for your service to our township. Today is the last meeting for Deputy Mayor Kathy Abbott. I want to thank the Deputy Mayor for her service to the community over the years and here on the Chatham Township Committee. Given her extensive work in the committee and the community, her expertise and her work ethic, Deputy Mayor Abbott was asked to return to the political fold and onto the committee when Mayor Ness stepped down. Deputy Mayor Abbott stepped up to serve despite taking on a new job, and she's been a valuable contributor since. I hope she continues to stay involved in local government. The committee wishes her well in her next endeavor.
Thank you.
As this is our last meeting of the year, I want to wish everyone a belated Happy Hanukkah, a very Merry Christmas, and a healthy and happy New Year. And now I get to do the proclamation because I think the Riley Kelly family is here. Okay. Whereas Riley Kelly, age 7, daughter to Kirsten and Tim and sister to Seton, is a Chatham Township resident and has lived her whole life here. And whereas in October 2017, Riley was diagnosed with leukemia. And whereas Riley bravely endured treatment from 2017 to 2019. And whereas leukemia is the most common cancer in children and teens, accounting for almost 1 of 3 cancers. And whereas treatment for leukemia is long and difficult and may include chemotherapy, bone marrow transplant, and other treatment protocols. And whereas 2 years ago, on December 18, 2019, Riley completed treatment and remains cancer-free today. And whereas Riley joined the Colonials 8 and under hockey team this year, and hockey challenges its players to work together as a team and requires physical strength, flexibility, and endurance. And whereas Riley's willingness to take on the challenging sport of hockey after battling leukemia serves as an example of resilience and hope. And whereas on December 18, 2021, Riley's Colonials hockey team will dedicate their game in her honor and celebrate the critical 2-year cancer-free milestone. And whereas Riley's courageous battle with cancer at such a tender age makes her a warrior and a hero in the eyes of our fellow Chatham Township neighbors and our hockey team family. Now, therefore, I, Stacy Ewald, Mayor of Chatham Township, on behalf of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham and the Chatham Township community, do hereby proclaim December 18th, 2021, Riley Kelly Day in Chatham Township, and encourage Chatham Township residents to send best wishes to Riley on her 2-year cancer-free anniversary and best wishes for good health. Do Riley and her family want to come up for a picture and to get the proclamation?
Whatever.
No. Here, we're gonna do one.
Oh, yeah.
It was removed.
Congrats, Riley.
Say Riley.
Riley. Good job.
Can you tell me everybody's name and your
Sure. Person Kelly.
I spell that.
K-I-R-S-T-I-N.
Okay.
And then Tim Kelly.
Tim. And your other door.
S-E-T-O-N.
Like Seton Hall?
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
Riley.
And Riley. R-I-L-E-Y.
And the dog?
Is Eva.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else?
Game on Saturday.
Just,
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Yes. Stacy, you got that.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next up is our reports. Let's see, Mr. Hamilton.
Happy holidays to everybody. As the mayor said, we missed Hanukkah, but Merry Christmas and Happy New Year in advance. On the library front, their holiday book sale was, the Friends of the Library holiday book sale was a smashing success. It raised over $4,000 additional for the library, which is great. And I'm also happy to report the library has received a significant grant to increase accessibility and do some repair and expansion work on accessibility ramps to the library. And I think I mentioned last meeting, a contract has been entered into for an engineering study to deal with the excess humidity problem that has been plaguing the library for some time, the results of which hopefully will be in January, which will then lead to clearing the way towards the next stage as far as certain construction or renovation projects that I know the Friends of the Library and everybody else have been waiting on for a long time. So we look forward to that. Not much to report on other fronts, other than holidays are here. Make sure you lock your cars, and the mayor talked about the current upticks in positive cases in town. So I will.
I'm just curious, on the Department of Health and meeting, did they, aside from the uptick, was there any?
We didn't actually meet this month.
Oh, I thought they met. Oh,
Of course,
okay.
the meeting would have been last night if we'd had it. But we didn't meet this month.
Okay. Mrs. Fondaco?
Yes, I only have to report on the Art League of the Chathams. They had their opening reception here last Sunday. It was a huge success with a great turnout. And the show will be on display until March and can be seen weekdays from 9 to 4. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone.
Deputy Mayor Abbott?
I have a little bit to report on the senior center, but for the athletics, for recreation, we found out that the Nashville lights, which were supposed to be installed about now, are going to take till January. Those lights were paid for by a $100,000 grant from the Chatham Ed Foundation, and we're grateful to that group for all its fundraising over so many years. And that's all I have to say right now.
Okay. My report, the joint court met on December 8th, and they went over the budget and the results for 2021. And because, the volume in the courts is still low and they are still on Zoom, there was some savings in 2021, which will be distributed back to the 5 towns. As was reported previously, Harding gave notice to leave the joint court, and that will be effective on January 1st, 2022. And the courts are in the process of transitioning, of working through that transition process. The courts are still virtual, and there are no plans at this point to go back to in-person. And I think that's all I had. Mr. LeConte.
My super simple report is that dog license renewal applications were mailed out on Tuesday. And also it's the same form for cat license renewals. So anyone that owns a dog or a cat, please send in your renewal form. And if you didn't get one, reach out to me and I can get you one. It's on the website as well. And I will start issuing those on January 1st.
Okay. Mr. Rushkey. Mr. Rushkey.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Mr. Cruz.
Mayor, nothing to report other than to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a happy and safe New Year. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Affman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just as the Deputy Mayor had reported, we had exciting news about Nash Field, the relighting project. The lights were delivered this week, but there were no truck drivers available to deliver the poles from Texas to New Jersey, which is part of our supply chain dilemma, I believe. So as soon as truck drivers are available, the poles will come and we will be able to relight Nash Field. The next thing I would like to report is that one of our employees, Erin Eichen, will be leaving us on December 31st, and I wanted to publicly thank Erin for her service to the township. She's been with us for about 10 years, or been with the township for about 10 years. And Erin gave us plenty of notice. She has a critical job with the township. She's our accounts payable person, and she could have just given us 2 weeks, but she gave us 3 months notice so that she could help train one of our other staff members. And in this day and age, I just think it's something that should be celebrated, that she thought enough of the township, she thought enough of her colleagues and her job to make sure that it's being left in good hands. And I wanted to publicly say thank you to her for doing that and wishing her well, because she will be moving out of state to start the next chapter of her life. I also wanted to take this opportunity to thank Deputy Mayor Abbott for her service to the township. She came in the middle of the year and helped with many, many things, and I just want to wish you the best of success in the next phase of your life, and say thank you for your help. Tonight we have a public hearing on a sign ordinance, which is designed so that we can have no parking on streets around the high school area. It would be from 7 a.m. until 1 p.m. and there had been a survey that had been sent out, and many residents had participated in the survey, and it's running at about 83% in favor of the change to no parking until 1 p.m. versus 17% that want to keep it the same. So that's on the agenda for tonight. Our leaf dump is going to be open for another Tuesday the 21st, from 8:30 to 2:30. Leaves don't fall off the trees on the schedule that we had on the calendar, so the leaf dump has been open for 4 Tuesdays, and we're doing that, and we will take a look at the schedule and see if we need to have it open sometime after Christmas. But just wanted to make sure that people knew that they could drop off their material there this Tuesday. As others have said, it's the holiday season, and I wanted to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, safe year. And I wanted to leave you with this saying from some unknown poet. May your hearth be warm, may your holidays grand, and your heart held gently in the good Lord's hand. And with that, I want to wish everybody Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and and that we all be safe in 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to open up our public hearing, but I do have some instructions to read. Meeting access is guided by the state of emergency and the related governor's executive orders. The committee meeting room is open to the public, and we look forward to having you join us. For your convenience, this meeting can also be viewed remotely on Comcast Channel 29, FiOS Channel 26, and Zoom, or you can listen in from your phone by dialing one of the numbers listed on the agenda. If you are watching via cable TV, you can participate in the public comment sessions of this meeting by dialing any of the phone numbers which are listed on the agenda and which will be shown on your TV screen. Callers must press *9 to raise your hand to speak. If you are watching via Zoom, you may speak during any of the public comment sessions by following the Zoom instructions to raise your hand. Whether in person or online, when you are recognized to speak, please mind the following procedures. Say your name, spell your last name, and give the name of your street. You do not need to give your street number. All public comments will be limited to 5 minutes. Rather than use any of your time answering questions, we will wait until you finish speaking before responding. We have 2 public comment sessions on tonight's agenda. Each member of the public will be limited to 1 comment of up to 5 minutes during each public comment period. Written comments submitted to the Township Clerk before 3 p.m. today will be read during the public comment sessions. Written comments are subject to the same guidelines as oral comments. Duplicative written comments may be summarized rather than read in full. Mr. LaConte, did we have any written comments submitted?
We do not.
Okay. So the public hearing is open. There are a number of ordinances that are on the agenda, and we will open public hearings for each of those agenda items as well. But we'll open it to folks in the room first.
Hi, Maureen Kelly, Mountain Avenue. I have 2 items just to bring to your attention. The first one is, I realize it's an item for discussion later in the agenda, but it would be really useful to know when some sort of decision would be made about meetings to be held in 2022, whether they're going to be in person or whether they will be remote. I mean, I have already received notice of a planning board meeting that's been rescheduled. I've just received today a notice of a Board of Adjustment meeting, and I am the chairperson of the Environmental Commission, and we would normally have a meeting kind of early in January, so it would be, not just for myself, but it would be useful to be able to alert people as to what the rules are going to be. So as soon as that, hopefully there's some sort of decision on that fairly soon. The second thing I want to bring to your attention is not that I know exactly what the right forum is for this, but it's come to my attention that the borough and the township do cooperate on quite a lot of things, and one of the biggest, of course, is our school system, and it represents about 2/3 of every homeowner's tax bill. So I don't think anyone would dispute that. What I'm wondering about, and it's a complicated subject, is the pilot programs. It seems to me that both the township is doing some pilots with our affordable housing, and I know that often an agreement is struck to, instead of giving all of that pilot money just to the municipality, I realize the county gets some, and there's often an agreement to give some to the school system, but we kind of don't know what that is and how that's booked. But I'm frankly concerned at what the borough is doing. They are entertaining a pilot program for a large development at the corner of Watchung and River Road. They also have some other land across the street that may be developed, and then they also have the Post Office Square. So while the township's pilots involve maybe 3 acres or something, what the borough is doing could potentially, I mean, already it's, I guess, about 30 acres, and it could end up being about 50 acres. So how that pilot would be negotiated and how the school system books the money would be of some interest. And I think the residents of both communities need some education on how these decisions are made. On one level, it's kind of disturbing to think that the borough could be making decisions about a pilot that's going to impact the taxpayers in the township when we don't have any say in that. So I'm not saying that that's happening, but I think a question was asked at the school board meeting recently, and they could answer for how the school budget is being constructed, but not how any money coming in from a pilot is booked. So I just think we need some education on that, and maybe it should be combined, the borough and the township and the school system. I don't know, but it's a complicated subject. So I just wanted to say that there are questions out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, quick address the meeting schedule. The meeting schedule itself will be finalized at the reorganization meeting in January. That's always when the next year's meeting schedule is finalized. Tonight's discussion will be just to review the proposed schedule, so that way I know when I'm putting in the resolution for the reorg. As to the whole in-person versus remote, I'll defer to Mr. Hoffman on that. I believe you're probably working with our health officer to answer that.
Yes, that is true. We will have another discussion about it on, I believe it's next Monday, but the initial discussions are that we will continue to have in-person meetings for the Township Committee. We will also be using Zoom in the future. So it would be a bifurcated meeting or a hybrid meeting.
Yeah. And those decisions are made as we go along. So, and depending on what's going on. But the reason this room is open and the planning board is not, is the planning board, just to fit the 9 members of the planning board, plus all the professionals, plus the applicants and their professionals, and to be able to manage the space was very difficult. So that's why they remain on Zoom. But it is a dynamic process, so we'll just try and make sure to push out the information as we get it. Regarding the schools and the pilots, I can only speak to what we've done on this end. And I'm trying to remember which side I was on at the time the pilots were being discussed. Quite possible I was in those seats. But the pilots for the 100% affordable complex, that's because the cash flow, the revenue flow on the rents is so much less, in order to make it something that developers would be interested in undertaking, then that's where the pilots are negotiated. So the dynamics are very different for 100% municipally sponsored development. When it comes to the impact to the schools and the school budget, and I know that the pilot, the money only comes to the county and it only comes to the town, but the reality is that the school district builds their own budget. So I've sat through many years of that. It's been a while since I paid attention to that, but they build their own budget. So, and they have their own caps. So if their budget right now is 70 million and they have a 2% cap, they're operating within that. And if they have an influx of children, and that's really what the impact is, the influx of children, then usually they can get waivers. But that's being offset right now because the enrollment has come down. Last I heard, the enrollment has been down in the younger grades, and then of course you get the older grades that are larger ones that are graduating. So net, I don't know what the impact will be. On our side, We had asked for some analytics from the developers to find out what they thought the impact was going to be to the school district. And 522 Southern Boulevard, I thought that was 50 students, and then I thought between Dixie-Dale and then I'm thinking 90 was the total. It's been a while.
Yeah, I can, we also had our financial advisors go through and do an analysis for us, and that was probably 18 months ago. I recall meeting with the superintendent of schools as well as the business administrator to review the data we had to help vet it and and discuss enrollment, and then what did the what did the potential offsets look like.
Yeah. So the real driver to their budget is the enrollment. And, and like I said, they're going to, if they are at 70 million and then they say they need 72 million and that fits within the cap, and they could, then will get passed because they don't have to go out anymore to get approval. But that's what they get. It's irrelevant of what's going on with the pilot. That's what's taxed, and that's what they get. So that's the best. Better off asking those questions at the Board of Ed meeting, but that's my understanding of the whole process. Did anybody else want to add to that? Okay. Did anybody else that wanted to come up here?
Mark Lewis at Gates Avenue, Chatham Township. So just to follow on to what Ms. Kelly was just speaking about, she was talking about a comment that I had made to the Board of Ed this Monday, and the question that I had asked and I had done follow-up with them. And what we were talking about with the pilot and where that comes into play is that our school board has not negotiated with into this development, and this is not 100% municipally funded. We're talking about the site on River and Watchung, right? So that's 259 units on 2.5 acres. It's 100 units per acre. And I had contrasted that deeply with the 2 units per acre that we have developed on Dixie-Dale at great, I'll say, blood, sweat, and treasure to our residents, where there's a tremendous amount of preservation. And at 2 units per acre, you have 30 acres, we have 54 units. It's even at less than 2 units per acre. What we're talking about there is basically R3 zoning in our township, which is the majority of our township. That's basically single-family home zoning, 2 units per acre. They went to 100 units per acre, and they did it in what's known as an inclusive development in a pilot, where they're accepting payment in lieu of taxes. So they're not going to be paid taxes. The taxes that are being paid, the projected tax savings to the developer is $15 million over 30 years, and the projected value of the pilot is $55 million, of which $0 right now, according to the Board of Education from Monday night, $0 are designated to go to the school district. And so where this falls is, if you look, of course, they are allowed to make such a deal, where 5% goes to the county, 95% goes to the municipality. But the issue is, if you look at our surrounding towns, such as Cranford, where they have had these pilot type of developments, 70% of the taxes go to the school. I'm sorry, 70% of the payment in lieu of taxes go to the school. And 30%, this is a deal that was struck very recently, 30% go to the municipality that then and is divided up with the county. So what ends up happening is, and that was a primer for 2 years, and then after that it fell back to the natural rate of whatever was negotiated, whatever is being paid on a tax basis to the schools. In Cranford, that happens to be 55%. So we went from 70%, and after 2 years, it falls back to 55%. Now, that seems like a reasonable arrangement, but in Chatham Township and Chatham Borough, in our school district of the Chathams, we have no such arrangement. And the horrible thing for us in the township is that we pay a greater percentage of the schools than the borough does, even on a per-student basis. And then, on top of that, they will be paying nothing for those students potentially if the municipality decides that that's what they're going to do. The Board of Ed explained that people who go into government, of course, have the school district's best, let's say, best outcome at heart, no matter what. I would say there should be some sort of an arrangement. And then if they were a standalone community, Chatham Borough, paying for their own schools, it would have nothing to do with us and we couldn't say anything. But the idea that we share the school district, there's something that's going to come down to every one of our residents because of this, the decision that's been made there. How much time do I have left here, Greg? Anything?
55 seconds.
Okay. Well, I did want to get to the concerns of our residents and, from door knocking. And I'll tell you, one of the big things that will come up besides the stuff I talked about last time is county roads. So our road paving has been, we've talked about it as being a worst to first type situation. I wanted to see if there was a possibility that we could put that worst to first list up for people to see, along with whatever grading we have for roads. Because if you could see when your road was last paved and you could see what grade it's given from an engineering survey, that would answer a lot of our residents' questions about when potentially is my road going to be paved again. And then going along with that, county roads, we talked about Fairmont last time and our portion being paved this year, but it seems to me that portion the county really owes us on Fairmont and also in Watchung. And they've done a portion of Watchung and we're going to do a portion of Fairmont. Yeah. It would really make sense to me that from an engineering point of view, we would look at the county's engineer and say, where are we on your worst to first list?
I have a comment on that.
Sure.
Well, I've always thought that we should have the paving schedule on the website, and I've seen that done in other towns. And in fact, it was a joke when I first got on the Township Committee because my street suddenly got paved right after I won the election. So. and actually Hall Road right next door didn't. I spoke to a neighbor about that last night. And I think that, there's no reason to hide it. If it's really worst to first, it's just facts, and it should stay that way so expectations are met and fairness is obvious.
Once a schedule is created, we will get it posted.
That'd be great.
On the county, Mr. Rushke, do you know what's available at the county level that we could share with residents?
On paving from the county level, they don't identify long-term paving schedules. You can usually get it on a year-to-year basis, but we can ask them. I haven't seen it in the past.
Okay.
And I could just comment briefly on certainly we have. We actually did a very comprehensive study on the all township roads, and there is a rating for each one of those lists, each one of the roads. And we can certainly do it. The only caveat or just disclaimer is that roads. The assessment is done in one particular year, and the condition of a road can change drastically from year to year. So, if you're making a commitment, that we're going to pave your road in 5 years, well, one of the roads that were in the 6th year or 7th year may have deteriorated faster when we need to change the list. And so, that's what's, we can certainly, publish, or post that report, but, and again, if we're going to commit to what roads we're going to pave, say over the next 10 years, then you're basically telling the committee, or that what kind of financing you're gonna do each year. So really we haven't posted that on a long-term basis because it's really the discretion of the committee from year to year on how much they're gonna actually spend towards paving. So it's but we can at least post the report on so everyone sees where their road lies with the current report.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
And I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I think it's typically in the spring that we have a program for that calendar year, and that does get made public once we know what it is.
Correct.
It's made public, but I don't think it stays up on the website, right?
Well, I believe we have had it, and we certainly can. And we always get notices out.
Maybe once, but not
We'll take a look at it. As John said, we did a significant study of the road paving. We looked not only at the surface, but at the subsurface of the roads, and that gave us a good understanding of what needed to happen, and we did change our ratings based on that. So we can post it, but just the caution is the township committee, we spend a certain amount of money on road paving, and we like to budget consistently for that. The amount of roads that we can pay is also based on petroleum prices and a couple of other factors. So we just we all need to understand that we can post it, but the criteria changes, and we're looking for constant funding, a level funding, so that we can figure out what roads get done, and we try and fit. If there's a smaller road, we will try and fit it in so that we can maximize the paving. But yes, we can look and do that.
Okay. And then there was a question about Fairmount, other parts of Fairmount, if you've heard anything about the county planning to pave other parts of Fairmount. Or I guess any of Fairmount, because right now it's just, we just got a grant for the Fairmount neighborhood. But that's
I don't know offhand, but we can get an update from the county on what schedule is for next year for Chatham.
Wonderful.
And just as a caveat, River Road is going to be paved next in the spring. That was New Jersey American Water ran a water line for approximately a mile, and we needed to let the trench set for a minimum of 6 months, but that there will be a mile of road paved in the spring, so that we can make that section of River Road whole.
Is that from Fairmount to Long Hill?
Yes, basically yes. It's down to
The Bridge Street?
yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Or in that direction?
It's wherever the trench ends.
Okay. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
Yes, we do. Screen name of Danny. If you could unmute, give your name and street.
Yes, Dan, Green Village Road. You have me?
Yes, we got you.
Okay, thank you. My first question is, I did join a little bit late. Am I under the understanding that the agenda with the public hearing and final adoption of ordinances stayed the same as what I'm reading off the website?
Yes.
Okay, and secondly, just an FYI, Morris County paving schedules they do them graduated on multi-year bases. A lot of times those are done by length of time between paving, not always need. A lot of times there's also extra dollars from year to year after the paving season is over, and more stretches of road can be paved, so sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease in those particular instances. One of the things that when I was there was helpful is that if the township so chooses to designate some stretches of county roads that are in serious need, to get that information there as quickly as possible over either to the head of public works or the engineering department is generally helpful in getting things done a little bit quicker for whichever municipality is asking for for those needs. So that's just an FYI, and I will comment further during the public hearings later on. Thank you.
Great, thank you. The only agenda change, which already would have happened, was the library presentation did not take place. So if you're looking for that, that they were not able to attend this evening, or it was the plan was to reschedule for January. Anybody else?
No, there are no more answers.
Okay. Okay. Seeing nobody else, I will close the hearing of citizens. So we'll move on to our public hearing, final adoption of ordinance, and we have a lot to cover. Given that we have a lot to cover, I mean, two things. I would ask our committee to leave your phones face down. I've received feedback from residents that that could be a little bit unsettling when they see our township committee members checking their messages. So I also will try something a little different. I think rather than have a dialogue with each other, we'll, I'll go around, see who has something to say about each of the ordinances, and then we could loop through a second time. But I'd ask you to either speak to me, address me, or to address the residents, because that's really who needs to hear why you're voting the way you're voting. Okay, the first ordinance, 2021-25. Mr. LeConte, could you read that ordinance?
I'll just start my camera. This is an ordinance of the Township of Chatham in the County of Morris, New Jersey, authorizing and making a special emergency appropriation in the amount of $150,000 for engagement of special consultant for the preparation of a master plan in conformity with the planning laws of New Jersey.
Okay. Did you want to give a brief description? And I'm just wondering, do we want Mr. Banish to speak and answer any questions at this point?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I believe that would be appropriate. I can give an opening remark if you want, but at the last Township Committee meeting, it was asked if our planner, Mr. Banish, would be available tonight to provide a brief overview of the master plan process, the pros and cons of it, and then answer any questions the Township Committee members may have about that. So he is available for that. This would probably be the appropriate time because there is the public hearing on the special emergency appropriation. That's something that the Township Committee would, will be considering as a method to fund a master plan. This special funding mechanism allows the township to pay for the master plan over a 5-year period, and it's something that the state provides to municipalities because of the cost of a master plan and the fact that it does last for a 10-year period. But if you'd like, this would be a good time for Mr. Banish to provide the overview that was requested and then answer any questions.
Yeah, why don't we do that? And then we'll open the public hearing, because this way they could hear from him first, and then if they have any questions, he can incorporate that at that point. Mr. Banish.
Very good. Yes, Mayor, would you like me to step in here and
please
take
do.
over?
Thank you.
Sure, happy to do that. Part of the question that's invoked by what you're talking about with this ordinance tonight relates really to why you would prepare a master plan in the first place. And given the fact that the township has a long history of having a master plan and having updated it, the question is really why would you want a new master plan at this point in history? With regard to the question about preparing a master plan, because the New Jersey legislature has delegated most responsibility for land use, planning, and regulation to municipalities, you all are in the driver's seat when it comes to creating the foundation for your local zoning. And in fact, land use laws in New Jersey essentially say without a land use plan element and a housing plan element, you really can't have a zoning ordinance. So these are fundamental underpinnings of what you need to be able to be sure that your zoning ordinance is not subject to challenge, successful challenge. The master plan's job really is to define both the environmental, protective, and conservation-oriented goals, and the development and construction-oriented goals, because it guides both types of activities. So it's really important to recognize that all of this is done in the name of the public health, safety, and welfare. At the very root of the municipal land use law are a series of principles, guiding principles they refer to as purposes of the law. The very first of which speaks very directly to protecting the community's public health, safety, and general welfare. So that's basically job one for a master plan and a zoning ordinance. And things that would do something other than that would not be favored by the law. Although there's a clear reason for adopting a master plan so that you underpin your zoning ordinance appropriately and it's not subject to challenge as being arbitrary, nonetheless, there are a series of other benefits that relate to having a master plan. One is the consistency that it offers in decision-making. You're going to go through a goal-setting process where if you do it well, you will articulate your objectives clearly enough that anytime somebody proposes a policy or a change to policies, you can go back and look at the intent of the plan through those goals and determine whether that intent is being advanced by a specific proposal. So the consistency of decision-making that comes from adopting that series of goals and statements of public policy that are embraced by the town is one very important part of that process. The ability to make informed decisions, taking data, using that data in the analysis of your local circumstances, and then providing policies that respond both to your local objectives and to that information that you've looked at is another important reason that the master plan digs way below the surface of some of the questions that are at the root of your development regulations. Predictability is important to everybody, the residents, developers, governing body members, planning board members. The plan offers the opportunity for there to be predictable outcomes when we're following the plan. And it guides wise use of resources so that rather than just letting things happen however they might, in fact, the municipal land use law has very recently strengthened the requirements in a land use plan element to look at not just how you can protect the public health and safety, but what vulnerabilities we have that municipalities need to address so that as we continue to see increasingly troubling types of storms and other weather events, we try to anticipate what municipalities can do through their planning policies to minimize the damage that would result from those types of activities. Community character is, in every community I've worked in, is an extremely important element. And, you know, it's like beauty, it's in the eye of the beholder. People may define it differently. But getting a common understanding of what it is about our community that is special and that we should be trying to protect is important, because there will be other parts of what's happening in a master plan and in a zoning ordinance that will be making changes to the community. So we certainly don't want the change to undermine the things that we think are the most valuable. And probably one of the other really important aspects of master planning is that economic development is important to every community. Some that have had a lot of suburban office development over the last half century have found themselves in a position where their rateable base has been turned upside down, and they're not yet sure where that's going to come back to some kind of equilibrium. But in every case, providing positive economic development opportunities, which can include things like tourism where appropriate, but which also include other types of non-residential uses, would be an area that the master plan would be trying to define in a way where those non-residential uses can coexist appropriately in your community with the desirable neighborhoods that basically form the backbone of the township. There are two elements of the master plan that are explicitly required by the land use law. And it's important to talk about these only because as we've listened to the proposals from the responders to the RFP, they all did a pretty good job of talking about the statement of objectives, principles, assumptions, policies, and standards on which the proposals in the master plan have been based. And that's a kind of a conglomeration of words that almost gets you lost in the words, but it's really the goal statement in the master plan. And if we do a good job at it, it reflects an understanding of what the populace believes is important in town, which means there's public outreach that's part of that process. And it evolves itself into an understanding that these are the types of things we're trying to accomplish in our town. The second element required by the municipal land use law in order to have a zoning ordinance is the land use plan element. And that's the one that I mentioned recently, that amendments to the land use law have brought sustainability to the forefront, and analysis of vulnerabilities and plans to deal with those vulnerabilities becoming very important now, where they were not previously part of the master plan process. So the land use plan element has taken on an increased importance, although it is kind of the underpinning of the zoning. And then the housing element also is another requirement in order to have a zoning ordinance that is consistent with the requirements of the law. And you have that already, to the extent that we just finished coming through that process as part of your declaratory judgment action, about moral action. If we talk about the benefits of an update to the master plan, using the latest tools, including tools for public engagement, to understand public opinion, existing conditions, and to help to extrapolate desired future conditions, means that the master plan can build both on the historic policy development of the community, which maintains the rational basis for zoning, which makes it not arbitrary, but can also color outside the lines to the extent that as the master plan examines changing circumstances, it's appropriate to make changing policies to reflect the right answer for those circumstances. Sometimes we'll find that everybody says things are just fine the way they are, don't change anything. Chances are more than likely that you may hear a lot of that, but that's not all you're going to hear, and it's important for us to listen to all the voices that talk about how change is impacting your community and what desirable change is compared to undesirable change. Master plan recommendations become the zoning ordinance when it's done properly. According to NJSA 40:55D62, the governing body may adopt or amend a zoning ordinance only after the planning board has adopted the land use plan and housing plan element of the master plan. So these are really critical underpinnings of the zoning that you're relying on to protect community character, which makes the master plan really the guiding document, and the zoning ordinance sort of the workhorse that's getting out there and doing the job of bringing those policies through regulation into reality. The question was asked was, what could be the detriment of updating the master plan? It's kind of hard to imagine really that would be a detriment, but I have to say that if it's not used in a way that guides growth and conservation in the community, then it's pretty possible that the expense, which is not insignificant of the master plan, and its possibility of sitting on the shelf and not really being implemented is a potential downside. In my experience, Chatham Township has never put the effort out to do the kind of work we're talking about and then not followed through with the zoning and other appropriate changes to policies and regulations. So I don't think there really is a downside in your case. I think it's more about making sure that we still have our finger on the pulse of changing circumstances, public opinion, critical issues that maybe are coming to the fore as we move further into the 21st century, and a fresh look at how we collect all that information. Some people have asked me why I did not submit a proposal to be one of the potential master plan preparers here. The biggest reason for that was because when Bob and I spoke about this project, I think we both agreed that because of the amount of time that I've been in the township, I'm certainly still an objective outside observer to a certain extent, but I'm an insider in a very big way because of the work I've done. And if we really want a fresh look at what's going to be brought forward, and particularly the public participation element, which will be a very important part of this next master plan, it would be good to have a third-party outside planner come in, and all the people we're talking about, I've worked with in the past. They're all credible. My objective is not to make this a two-planner town where you have to pay for two different planners. They're going to do a discrete job separate from what I'm going to do. And mostly what I'm going to do is help those policies that come through this next master plan process find their way into all the right regulations so that the real benefit of what we're going to get out of this plan becomes fully formed and implemented. But I think it is important to recognize that the question, why would you want two planners, isn't easy to answer unless there's a really distinct reason for having both of them. I believe, and I hope that you'll ultimately find that my relatively long-term experience here, my institutional knowledge, will sort of help people doing the new job stay on the right course and not get diverted by things that maybe don't matter. But at the same time, they're not going to be driven by me telling them what the plan should say. They're going to go out, collect the data and the information they need to in the public opinions, and come back and report back to you all. So I'm not sure, I probably talked a lot longer than I needed to. I'm not sure I covered everything the administrator wanted me to, so I'm going to turn it back to Bob and see if we've gotten where we need to get to here. Thank you.
Thank you, that was a big help. Let's go to the committee first. Does anybody have questions for Mr. Banish?
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned, Mr. Banish, that we have a master plan and that the township has a long, I believe the phrase you used was long history of having a master plan and updating the master plan. Have we ever needed or actually done anything like what is being proposed here as far as incurring the significant expense of contracting with another party to do this process, or have we undertaken it ourselves?
My understanding is that back in the 1990s, the planning effort that looked like a coordinated, comprehensive master plan, I think it was a 1999 document, was the last time that all of the parts were examined at the same time, and it was probably the first really comprehensive master plan that was done for the town. So since 1999, lots of things have changed. Some of the plan elements have been updated as they needed to. Certainly the housing element is fully updated and needed to be for us to get through the court process. But I think there are other questions that come to the fore, and I don't want to try to suggest what they are, because if we do a good job with that public process, you're going to find that people will come out and tell you there are a lot of things they like and they want for you desperately to fight to protect. And there are going to be some other things they're concerned about, and they'd like you to find ways to help make things better in town about those types of issues. So I do think that front-end public participation part, which sounds a little warm and fuzzy or loosey-goosey, or you could use your own adjectives, but it's not scientific the way some of the other parts of what we do are. And in the end of the day, most of what we do is that scientific. It's more of an art than a science. But the public participation part, when it's done well and when it's robust, really brings the best ideas in the community and the concerns that people really legitimately want us to deal with to the fore, and they become part of the policies that we have to act out here. So I do think it's a very worthwhile process. I also think, to answer the question further, we've heard price tags that sound, as you mentioned a minute ago, not insignificant for sure. We don't know that at the end of the day, when we finish negotiating with any of these contractors, that would actually be the price. And my sense from the conversations I've had is that the price will probably be substantially lower than that when we define tightly define the scope of work that's needed to really put us in the right position for the next 15, 20, 25 years. That's what we look. This is not a plan for the next 5 years. This is a way to look far enough out that we're going to think about some of the changes that'll happen over that period of time and what they'll do in your town, and try to respond as best we can to what our opportunities and constraints will be because of that. I hope that answers the question.
And the short answer is yes, back in 1997 we did this.
Okay, and since then we have updated it independently?
Yeah, there are various elements that have been updated one element at a time since the late 90s.
But when we say update, it's always a planner that has to do it, and except in a few small cases where we do a minor update and the planning board does it themselves, right? A subcommittee. Is there a microphone on? Oh, no, it's not. Sorry. I mean, I'm just trying to clarify the process, that when we do it piecemeal, it still has to be done by a professional, and Mr. Banish is an outside vendor, but he's our planner. So it's the same idea, just that these would be, we're looking at different bidders than Mr. Banish, as he explained, that he didn't intend to bid for this major update of our master plan. but we always have to hire outside people. It's not like we have staff that do it.
Okay.
But I'd like to make a comment on agreeing with Mr. Banish, but the reason that I think many of us run for township committee is because of land use issues that we notice in our own neighborhoods or our own yards. And I am sure that, I'm thinking of past mayors, I'm thinking of myself we have stormwater issues in my neighborhood. I've, even in the short 6-month stint that I've done, I've talked to people who are downstream even from where I am, which isn't a low spot. All of Wickham Woods is downstream from where I am on Wynwood Road. The whole area on the side of Southern Boulevard where Mr. Lois lives is concerned about stormwater, anything adjacent to the swamp. The swamp's the bottom, right? So we're all concerned about stormwater. Our storms are going to be getting worse because of climate change, and it's great that the state mandated, I guess it's called the sustainability element, I forget the exact words, but it's absolutely a concern and will grow. And if this is a 10-year master plan and we're doing a good job, we'll be controlling it the best we possibly can. If we have public input, no one's going to say, and I hear this, what a shame in Chatham Township that, oh, there's always corruption in the town, and there really shouldn't be. If we're asking for public input, then that kind of idea that someone's getting their way or builders are getting their way should, those fears should be alleviated because everyone's following the same rules and they're protective of the homeowner. So besides my issue with stormwater, there are other people that are concerned with circulation or even parking, like the ordinance we're going to hear tonight. But I know I worked on Safe Routes to School because people were asking about that, and that is in part of the master plan. And then, of course, affordable housing. Committeewoman Felice ran because of land use regarding affordable housing. I mean, I know Tom Patterson ran for that, for those reasons, about his street, and also Joe Riley a long time ago. Abby Fair was a big environmentalist wanting open space. People who run for this committee are doing it because of land use a lot of times. And what's the other major job of the township committee or local government? It's public safety. But the police do that. We don't have that much to do with it except hire the police. Most of what we do is land use. So we should really care about a master plan that's going to outlive not only our terms, even if you make it to a second term, it's actually your legacy in the whole town because people are going to continue to come here. So I just cannot say enough about doing a really good master plan. And I also know that we have some very outdated, we actually have, we're out of compliance on some elements of the master plan. So we really have to do them, and we should have been doing them. And funding it in this fiscally prudent way over 5 years for something that lasts at least 10 years is great. I don't see there's no downside, and it's a market rate pricing we're getting because we did competitive bidding. So I just cannot see why would we want to pay for element by element and not just look at it all at once and get public input all at once? It sounds like the smartest thing ever, and I'm fully behind it.
Okay, going back to if there's any questions for Mr. Banish, I did have a question. And Mrs. Abbott alluded to it. In terms of the scope, Mr. Hoffman had sent out an analysis of the kind of the base fee, which covers the goals and objectives, and it covers the municipal land use, that aspect of the master plan. And I believe it covers the required section, the kind of not storm management. I actually have it here. Let me just pull it up. Okay. The
Vulnerability assessment?
The which assessment?
The vulnerability?
Yeah, the climate vulnerability assessment. So those were the three that would be included in the base charge. And then the recommended expansion would be the circulation elements, utility and stormwater elements, and community facilities, all which are obvious to me. Circulation would touch on concerns regarding the sidewalks, concerns regarding traffic, and just, look at the flows throughout town overall. Utility services, we know that our wastewater treatment plan is, especially with our affordable housing, could potentially reach capacity. We know that we have aging infrastructure, so that's critical to have the utility services and stormwater element updated. And then community facilities, we're always talking about disposition, certainly of this building, and then also the police station, and then it just overall looks at all assets. So those are the three recommended, but there was also on your list, you had what did you have? Conservation element, which includes a natural resource inventory. And you also had historic preservation. Can you just speak to those two? And if you want to speak to any of the expanded, the other three that I mentioned as well.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I stuck these things in my ears, so I just never know. I don't hear myself when I do that. The conservation element, the reason that I have identified that as one of the important ones is because of the role it plays. I think the conservation plan that the planning board adopted 10 years ago or whatever it was up to date at the time. The difference is that some of these issues related to, we're going to talk in the land use plan about climate-related vulnerabilities and other issues of land use vulnerability, and yet so much of what we're really talking about is part of what you're dealing with in the conservation plan. So it's almost like the two of them would want to work together. You're seeing, for instance, the floodplain in the conservation plan that tells you where that vulnerability is. And then we'll get some knowledge from facts and circumstances in the meantime that'll update what we know about that risk, and then we're going to want to do something with that risk. And it's probably going to need to be addressed both in the land use plan, like the statute says, and connected to the conservation plan where that analysis has come from. That's the reason I suggested that one. Historic preservation, I guess I've had the feeling for a long time that the historic assets in town have dwindled substantially. I love the signs that have been put up. They're probably the nicest I've seen anywhere in the state, and they're reminding us of that really important historical past. Whether or not you want to get into the business of landmarking old buildings, we've talked about this, and I've talked with the governing body and the planning board in the past about this, and there was a sense that whatever rights come with your acquisition of a piece of property should not be fettered by what the town's going to do with these kinds of regulations. So in other words, if you had a house from the 1700s at a corner of a road, say like River Road and Fairmont or something, and it had the potential to be multiple building lots for very expensive homes, the diminutive 17th, 18th century home would not necessarily rise to the level of being important enough to save compared to the economic imperative of the value of that property. That all sounds very cryptic, I realize, but the real point is, if one of your guiding principles in town is that those resources should be protected to some extent and not just allowed to disappear because you can tear down any house in Chatham Township and build a bigger one, then that's something we need to bring through a process of public understanding, some kind of commitment on the part of the town to wanting preservation where it's appropriate, and then policies and strategies that will help to do that. And I feel like the clock is ticking on those resources in a way where that moved that one up the list. But I do think that your original short list is the most important of those elements that we have to do, and the conservation plan and historic preservation element would be follow-on elements and not ranked right up there with the others.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Another question, I keep hearing that we have a 10-year requirement, but given that the overall master plan was done 97, 99, and then there's been miscellaneous updates, how does that fit, and where does the 10-year requirement come from?
I'll explain that really quickly. The municipal land use law was amended to say you can't just leave your master plan on a shelf and assume that because it was good 50 years ago, it's still good. So initially it required every 6 years, now the law requires that every 10 years you do an evaluation, a periodic reexamination of the master plan, and you ask a series of 5 questions that talk about what the issues were last time you did a master plan, whether they've changed in a positive or negative way, what changes are appropriate for the master plan and development regulations based on what's happened in the meantime, and whether redevelopment is an appropriate thing to examine. And so when you write that report, it's a very interesting arrangement because you don't need any kind of public notice to come in. I could walk in with a re-exam any night that the planning board is meeting. They could read it and say, sounds good to me, and adopt it. Whereas for any other master plan element, you need to have the full notice to the public and adjoining municipalities. That notice, is obviously referenced in the hearing process. Without those notices, the hearing is not valid. And so what's ironic about all this is when you do a reexamination report, if it invokes changes to the master plan, those changes can be made part of the zoning ordinance without having to go through the super notice requirement that the law imposed some years ago. And so many towns find that it's great that they do re-exams all the time, because if you do another one and say we need to make this other change, you don't have to spend all that money on a lot of notice. But the point really is, there's no requirement that your comprehensive master plan be redone, ever. The requirement is that whatever you're calling a master plan get reevaluated under those standards, and then you determine whether you need a new plan or you need to change some parts of your plan. And I think we're at this point in the process right now because it's been determined that essentially rethinking certain elements of the master plan is appropriate. Not that we're wrong at this point, but it's almost like if you never question it, how do you know it's still right? And I think there's an awful lot that we've heard from the public, certainly in the course of these affordable housing discussions and other zoning changes, like Dixie Dale. And the public has come out and had a lot to say about what they'd like to see happen in their town. So this master plan process that we're talking about would give a full voice to all of that as a prelude to policy and planning.
Great, thank you. Were there any questions
Welcome.
from the committee?
When was the last time one of those reevaluations was done?
I believe it was 2017.
Okay. Let's open it to the public. So the public hearing for this particular ordinance is open. The ordinance to discuss the master plan.
The special emergency.
The special emergency, thank you, authorization. There's my notes, okay. Yes.
Good evening. Michael Kelly, Mountain Avenue. Our consultant, planning consultant, Frank Banish, did a much better job than I could ever do in terms of addressing the specifics of the whole question before the Township Committee. But I'd like to just add a perspective from someone who has been on the Township Committee and had to deal with the kinds of questions and issues that come up. That I think an updated master plan would have been very helpful. When the subject of the master plan has come up in the recent meetings and in the introduction of tonight's ordinance, some very legitimate questions were raised by different members of the Township Committee. One was that it's unnecessary, and I would take the position that it is a very necessary and opportune exercise. The whole process of including the public feedback in an organized way. Speak up ahead of use so I think get better. Very good. I think we all ran for public office supporting the need for public communication, for transparency. I think this is a huge opportunity to really deliver on that promise, to let the public participate in a master plan exercise that really expresses what they want to see in the way of their township. Some of the issues that I can think back on that the master plan helped and an updated master plan would have helped more were the whole questions of sidewalks. Why deal with individual questions? Do we want a sidewalk here? Do we want a sidewalk there? There should be an updated review of what the township as a whole feels about sidewalks and where they should go. Interestingly, there were two topics on the agenda for last night's zoning board meeting that I think fall right into this. The zoning board heard a variance application for a accessory domestic use in a expanded garage type building. The zoning board shouldn't have to grapple with this on a case-by-case basis. A master plan and the whole exercise of talking it through and getting the public input would, I think, really help the township and help the zoning board on those kinds of issues. They had another application last night on the zoning board agenda was expanding a house to include a separate dwelling unit for a special needs family member. Again, the positives of that and what are the negatives of that? One of the concerns was, what does that do down the road when the current residents move out and the house is there now with two dwelling units or potentially two dwelling units inside the same building? So on the question of whether it's necessary or not, I think it's very necessary, and perhaps the most important example is the affordable housing. I think the public did come out on the affordable housing issue, spoke very loud and long about that specific issue, and I think that protecting particular areas of the township, looking ahead, we don't have that much time before the fourth round of the affordable housing has to be in place in 2025. And after this master plan is updated, it has to be implemented with zoning changes if that's the choice of what comes out of this. And 3 years is not an overly long time to get all that done, so we're prepared for the next round of affordable housing. The next question that was raised when this was discussed at previous meetings was it's too expensive. I think that was addressed, but just to recap, $150,000 is a lot of money. It's probably going to be less once the number of elements are defined. And then if it's spread over 3 years, it's going to be something short, spread over 5 years, excuse me, it'll be something less than $30,000 a year. That to me sounds like good budgeting, good government to deliver the positives that we're talking about here. And then the third legitimate question I think that was raised in previous meetings was why not use our current planner and basically our volunteers on the various boards to do this on a piecemeal basis and on a less expensive basis than to really give it the in-depth and professional review. I think Mr. Banish touched on that. We're going to benefit from having an outside, fresh set of eyes that they are going to give us this in-depth look and communication and transparency. I think that I think that it is unrealistic to think that the volunteers on our boards can really do the same kind of in-depth look, or that our planner, who's also our planner for the planning board, for the township committee, and for affordable housing, can just somehow layer this on top of those duties. It would certainly cost extra money, and it wouldn't get us the outside look and the fresh perspective that I think would be so important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Maureen Kelly, Mountain Avenue. I want to thank Mr. Banish for one of the most excellent summaries of what a master plan is all about. Anyone who's not persuaded by what he said, I don't know where you're coming from. I think the vote that you're about to take is one of the most important votes that you've had, at least in a year, and I urge you to vote to approve this money. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll still do comments. Can we hold off on that? We're still going to do comments.
Okay.
Okay?
Since we're still in public hearing,
Yeah, we're still on public hearing, and that's what I was going to ask you, if you have anybody.
Dan?
Yes, thank you, Dan Miller, Green Village. One of the things that I wanted to address was the transparency issue. I want to thank Mr. Banish, having sat on a planning board in the past and seen the master plan looked at numerous times, going back many years. I've seen many different things happen. Mr. Banish has done a tremendous job, and I thank him for that, and I thank him for the explanation. Back to the transparency issue. One of the things that I have seen in the past is that there was not direct public engagement for people being affected by changes or possible changes to the master plan. In the past, there has been no notification to homeowners when zoning changes were being made prior to those changes being made. And I want to make sure that prior to you approving this or not approving this, that those fail-safes are put in place. Okay, I can speak to Green Village, and we can go anywhere from sewer capacity being given away, to zoning being changed, to lots being split in half as to what their zoning are, with zero notification to the homeowners, to the neighborhoods, so on and so forth. And it's critical, especially when one of the things Mr. Banish brought up, and I don't believe that it's inappropriate at all, is historic value. And it is true that there are many homes that have historical value throughout our town. But one of the elements that needs to be addressed with that is homeowner agreement, neighborhood agreement, and also a very big one is compensation. It's important that, things that property owners' rights are not taken away from them or limited without compensation for what the potential was prior to those limitations. And some of those things have been done. You can go way back, 30 years more, okay? Celeste might be able to remind me better as to how long ago it was, but I don't think it's important. But, there was a time when zoning was done through denial of services. And I know you've all heard me speak about this many times. And we need to make sure that that's not done. And I think it's very appropriate when we bring that up with the historical value of some of the places here around town. And, you guys all know that I love history and I love preserving history and so on and so forth. But, we cannot do that without proper compensation to the property owner when we're taking, if we choose to take things away, or if we choose to increase, for lack of better word, zoning capacity, where maybe you take, and change someone's, zoning section, take them from R1 to R2 or 3 or 4, so on and so forth, where you've either limited or increased the capacity of what they can do with their properties without compensation just because we say we can. Okay, because that's unfair to the property owners, and I think a master plan for the township is always something that should keep, number one, property owners in mind. And when we do those things, those property owners need to be contacted. An agreement between the township and them needs to be reached. Many times over the years I've seen where folks from one side of town love to dictate what people are going to do on the other side of town. I think we even saw a lot of that with the affordable housing issues. Okay? And, it's human nature. I'm not saying that, anybody's good or anybody's bad, but when it comes to limiting or expanding what can go on someone's property, it should really, be a negotiation between that particular neighborhood, the property owners involved there, and not what somebody's idea of what it should be, who lives very far away, or, for lack of a better word, a bureaucrat who's been hired to make these decisions for you without notification to those property owners and their specific input. Okay?
Mr.
And
Miller, I'm gonna have to
I want
stop
to
you there.
ask you now if you will make sure that that is included when, in whatever contract is given out to whomever is going to be looking at these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
I think that would be something that he would, can I say that? He said he hopes that they'll reach out to the neighbors, and that's part of the plan of the people that put it together, is to reach out to the residents.
So make sure you're proposing.
Oh, well,
Yeah, no, I would certainly say when we had the presentations, that was a priority for me, was that there would be a real effort to reach out to the community as much as possible. And there, we had asked questions about that. So I absolutely agree that we want to make sure residents are aware of what's going on. The other thing is, and Mr. Banish could speak to this, that once it kicks into kind of a zoning implication, then I would assume there's all kinds of notification and what's typical with any type of zoning change. Mr. Banish, can you touch on that? What would happen? The review, we go through our 1-year master plan process, and now we're in year 2, and there's the zoning, any kind of zoning implications that come out of that.
Right, typically what would happen would be, there would be changes to the land use plan map, and in a well-planned municipality where the zoning and the master plan are in sync, the zoning map looks just like the land use plan. So to whatever extent we need to make changes to that map that are already implicated by things that have happened, that didn't show up on the map yet, Dixie Dale, I guess, has probably clearly already been a zoning change on the map. But the next step coming out of the master plan process would be wherever anything should be changing, there would be an ordinance. It might be one ordinance that has lots of changes in it, or it might be a series of different ordinances with individual changes that would all be brought before the governing body, referred back to the planning board for their consistency review, consistency with the new master plan, and then recommendation for adoption by the governing body. So probably that following year, the first several months, would be filled with hearings related to those changes that you would be putting into the zoning. And again, that's kind of crystal balling it, because I really can't guess at the nature or extent of the changes, but I think it's only fair to assume that there would be changes.
Thank you. Yes.
If there's recommendations for zoning ordinance changes, when it comes back to the Township Committee, there would be public hearings on that, so residents, it would be advertised and residents would know about the impact.
And there's also a legal requirement when a zoning ordinance is done. If a zone is changed, typically you have to send notice to every property owner within the zone by both regular and certified mail, and everybody that owns property within 200 feet of that zone by regular and certified mail, in addition to all the public discussion and public hearings and posting stuff on the website. We in the past, we have always followed the law and the legal requirements and done what we can to make sure people are aware.
Great, thank you.
Madam Mayor, may I make one other comment? While we were discussing this and Mr. Banish was giving his excellent presentation, it dawned on me that I needed to let the Township Committee know and the public know that Planning Board Chairman Tom Franco deserves praise, because I asked for his help and he helped edit the RFP, the request for proposal that went out for that was sent out and that the 18 organizations responded to. But that was just an example of one of our volunteers helping out and in making the document and the process better and easier to understand. And I just wanted to publicly thank him for that.
Thank you. Okay, so is there anybody else for the public hearing on this ordinance?
We don't have any new hands.
Okay. Oh.
Mark Lois, Gates Avenue. I just wanted to ask Mr. Banish about the elements from 2020 that are that were updated, that are the newest. It just seems that those were done for affordable housing as our settlement came in 2017, or at least, I'm sorry, it was signed in 2018, and then some work was needed to be done on the master plan in order to accommodate that. Seeing as we have another round in 2025, is there an anticipation there of changes potentially, or something that this comprehensive look at a master plan, which I'm not sure that the current bids are comprehensive, as all the elements are not completely known, but can you speak to that a little bit about pieces that need to be changed, 2025 deadline coming up, and how comprehensive this will be in light of that situation?
Sure, thank you for the question. Certainly the anticipation of what the next round obligation will be is going to be kind of hard to guess at, partly because we started out in a system where the rounds were supposed to last for 6 years initially. So if we started in 1983 and you went every 6 years, we certainly wouldn't be in the third round now. We'd probably be quite a ways down the line. So I'm not sure that the planners will be able to guess very well what it is the target is that they would be trying to provide affordable housing solutions for. But I think the fact that they will be talking well in advance of 2025, I think the earlier you start to figure out what the right answer is, the more time you have to vet it, and if there's something wrong with it, to find out that there's something wrong and still get it right in time to meet that July 2025 deadline. Anybody who's watched us come through the process of sites on River Road that we thought were going to be highly developed, that probably clearly should not have been and are not going to be, has to worry about whether or not sites like that might be coming back up again in the future, or how we would defend ourselves against the opportunity for someone to put a couple of those steep slope lots together and say, I got a flat spot here big enough for some affordable housing. So I would think part of the job of this next master plan is going to be to try to do some crystal balling, and particularly to try to understand what vulnerabilities the town might have by way of its zoning or other features that might maximize or minimize the extent of that obligation. That's something that your land use policies can have a lot to do with, so I think that's an important issue. Did I answer your question? I feel like I talked all around it there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. Yeah, so my question, or what I was trying to get at there, was just that it's clear that after this settlement, after we had determined what our obligation was going to be, then there were changes made, and that may come up again, and this may be more of an evolving type plan than something that we can set now and say it will be good for a period of 10 years. I wanted your input on that in terms of, because you had also mentioned that neighboring communities often do a review, and it's sort of this idea that it's a one and done and we won't revisit it.
No, I think you have to assume that the affordable housing obligations are going to remain fluid, and that over time there will be, unless the legislature somehow changes the perception of what the constitutional obligation is, we will continue to have they should be 10-year rounds now, so it should go from 25 to 35 for the next round. But I think being ahead of the curve before 2025 gets here is going to help the township come up with a way to deal with their obligation that can best fit in with the community and not damage what you think of as the important community character elements.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have anybody left? Zoom? On Zoom? We're good.
We don't have anything yet, so if we're
Okay.
still following the procedure of one bite at the apple per hearing, then we're done.
Yes. Allowing a little flexibility, Greg. Okay. Okay, so the particular ordinance in front of us is Ordinance 2125, Special Emergency Appropriation for Master Plan Updates. This requires 4 votes.
That is correct.
Okay, so what I wanted to do was open for discussion first, so we have a sense of what direction, on the committee, so we have a sense of what direction that we're heading. I'll go through one by one. Deputy Mayor Abbott, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Just continuing what I already said, because it wasn't asked, I am so familiar with master planning that I didn't have a lot of questions, but Mr. Kelly brought up I didn't realize the zoning board was really looking at accessory dwelling units essentially, and that has been a topic all across the country as affordable housing is creating pressure on single-family zoning, and it's actually cracking single-family zoning. So if we are starting to face pressure from builders to have accessory dwelling units in Chatham Township, that is coming very fast, mostly starting in California, where there's just no more place to put affordable housing in areas that allow dense development, and then it starts to happen where single-family zoning is broken up by exceptions for accessory dwelling units, where you essentially have two homes on one lot. So we've got to really put that in our master plan and think about what we want. Because there is an argument that, oh, well, you can have a family member who can't afford to live alone or needs to live near the family, but how does that affect everyone else, and what kind of chain reaction is that? It's so important. So I just heard, it was just in the New York Times this weekend, that it's come to New Jersey. Princeton, Maplewood are considering it. I think maybe even Summit. I mean, it's really happening fast. And so it's got to be part of our master plan to even consider accessory dwelling units. Why is the zoning board getting it? Again, looking at it case by case. We don't have a plan of how accessory dwelling units fit into our rural character or our green Chatham, which, as you all know, most people here have moved from a more dense area in New Jersey, and our main concern is green spaces between homes. So we don't want to necessarily have a lot of infill in single-family zoning. Thanks.
Mrs. Fondaco, did you have anything you wanted to?
No, but I definitely agree with Kathy and what Mike had said earlier. And I just think that we need to get this moving on and get going.
Mr. Allison?
Yeah, I mean, I think my position, which, you know, is contrary to some of the other members, is pretty well articulated. And I just want to make it clear for the record that, you know, I agree largely with Mr. Banish and Mrs. Abbott and Mr. Kelly about the need for sound planning and revisiting the master plan and making sure that we're well prepared for 2025 amongst many other issues, including the one that Kathy just raised going forward. I'm just not sold on the necessity for this particular emergency appropriation or this particular allocation of these funds, and necessarily the whole concept of an additional, and I understand the issues that have been explained to a certain extent about, you know, two-planner, not adopting a two-planner system, but I have concerns about the whole outside consultant situation and the slippery slope associated with it. And frankly, I have concerns about the timing of this as far as where we are in a somewhat sharply divided community, but as far as different agenda points, and we recently had an election. We're going to have a newly formulated committee in a couple weeks with new members, a new mayor. It's likely we're going to have new representation on some levels on the various boards and new volunteers, and I acknowledge the value in fresh eyes coming to this table. I think that a lot of the same people have been around a lot of these issues for many years, and that's appreciated. But I'm not planning on voting for this. So procedurally, I don't know what the best option to keep our options open are as far as should we take a vote or is there some way to keep this open for further discussion?
Well, so let me just kind of go through and Mr. Hoffman can help me if I'm missing any of the points. There's two parts to this. There's the funding, and then there's the selection of the vendor. So the two are intertwined, and we had to talk about the master plan, and you have to decide that you're going to fund it before you're going to sign contracts and tell people you're going to pay them to do the work. So the two are intertwined. We need 4 votes for the funding. And Mr. Hoffman did ask the vendors if they would allow for another 30 days in order to allow the new committee to look at this come January. Unfortunately, that expires January 31st. There's just so long you can ask these people to keep holding off. And if they don't hold off, then we have to go through a whole new RFP process. Correct me if I'm wrong.
The answer is yes. If they decide that they would not continue to hold their proposal for the Township Committee to consider, then yes, this is a professional. The RFP is for professional service, but then we would have to go out and look for either the current folks to resubmit a proposal or do it again.
Is there anything that would prohibit them from submitting the same proposal? I mean, it doesn't sound like it'd be a lot of work.
They've responded to an RFP for professional services. They've responded to this specific RFP that gives the Township Committee the option to select some or all of the elements. I can't speak for those that have submitted proposals, but they will not keep their proposal open forever. I guess that's the answer. But your question was, can they resubmit? Can we do it? Can we redo the RFP, and can we ask them to submit again? Was that the question?
Yeah, more or less. Like, and not necessarily within. I don't necessarily see any utility in kicking this down the road 30 days necessarily. I see, more the conceptual idea where we get the new committee in place, we get all the various members of various volunteer committees populated and what have you, and we look at our options and whether we think that we have the resources to move forward and address these issues independently on a community basis with the boards, and obviously input from the community in general, who obviously is free to come to any meeting they want and provide input, and it could be publicized, and see what our options are. And if at some point, not necessarily in the next 30 days, the consensus is reached that we want this kind of outside help, we could put another request out there, and there's nothing to stop these same 3 professionals or anybody else from coming back and saying, well, here I am again. You know what my proposal is, here it is.
Well, yeah. Their proposal would probably change based on whatever the changes to the request for proposal would be, because based on what you said, it sounds like there would be more volunteer involvement, and there would be the professional planners would be working on fewer elements, or
not necessarily. Just we'd have to see where it goes. The question is whether or not we need this. I'm not satisfied that we do right now as we sit here.
Do you think that you were going to get volunteers, people that are already working for the town to do this? Is that your exactly?
No, I'm talking about, fresh eyes. I like the fresh eye. I think we're all in agreement on the fresh eyes concept, but I mean, fresh eyes could come in the form of new members of the committee, of new residents of the committee, of the township who want to be involved and get involved. And I'm leery, frankly, of, inviting, so-called experts, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way at all. I understand that the professionals who came here are experts and professionals and do a good job to make recommendations, and I know we're not bound by those recommendations, but those type of things, in my view and my personal experience, can become problematic if, for example, a new committee decides they don't like those recommendations, or they're not going to follow those recommendations, and then all of a sudden you've got, well, you had a professional consultant who recommended this and you didn't do it, and that's arbitrary, you know, and that leads to problems too. So I'm just not sold on the concept.
Okay.
It's just it.
Well, the reason that there shouldn't be the ability to say I'm not sold on the recommendations is because all of the finalists have said that it's important that they have meetings with both the planning board and the township committee on several occasions, as well as whatever a steering committee is, so that they don't go off track. So that would be
No, I think you
one way.
misunderstood me. I mean, you can't just say, there's no basis for saying, I'm not personally sold on the whole necessity for outside consultant, period.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mark. I just don't understand. Do you think Mr. Banish is an outside consultant?
And
He is a
sorry,
vendor.
an additional, outside consultant specific for this purpose, yes.
Okay. So I guess I'll make my statement in terms of why I supported the master plan and this funding mechanism. Over the years, when I was sitting out in the audience and then on the committee, I've heard from residents, and even more so as mayor, as to a series of concerns. And whether that's traffic, whether that's dangerous intersections, whether that's sidewalks, overdevelopment, wrong development, housing, fair share housing, the affordable housing, where it's placed, why wasn't the community involved in those decisions. And it makes me uncomfortable when we address these things either with Band-Aids, which is what happens when you do it piecemeal. And, this process really is a comprehensive look at the town, and the goal is to involve the community as much as possible. I mean, that was definitely a priority for everybody every vendor that I asked a question of. And at that point, when everybody's involved, then we can decide what our priorities are. Where we as a community think, or how we as a community think we're going to address affordable housing. Not the specifics of the housing element and fair share document. That's a very specific mapped out document. But an overall view of how we want to address our affordable housing. An overall view of what we think about sidewalks in our community and our connectivity. Some communities, it's bike lanes. We have issues, again, with traffic and intersections that are dangerous. And the traffic studies are done, but it's all done very piecemeal. And to me, this is the way you look at the whole thing comprehensively. The funding mechanism is really just to spread it out over 5 years. And I guess what I'm hearing, your big concern is, I guess, having Mr. Banish do it versus, or have some abbreviated version for Mr. Banish to do versus having these outsiders that we've selected. So, and that's not going to be something that gets resolved tonight, it seems.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, in that case, I need a motion to table this ordinance.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Or we can vote, I guess.
Okay, not seeing a second. I guess we don't have...
Wait, can you explain the consequences of not seconding?
So the motion that's on the table is to table this, and basically what we're doing is we're just letting them decide next year, and unfortunately it just means a reboot. But the alternative is that we vote for it, knowing it's going to fail.
Right, so I move to a second tabling it.
Okay.
Mrs. Fondaco?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Abbott?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes. And with that having been tabled, then we'll also take off the agenda the follow-up resolution that was going to be dealing with the appropriation.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, ordinance number 2021-27, and hopefully the next few will move a little bit faster.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I just wanted to say thank you to our planner for the presentation, and he can stay if he wants, but
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Banish. Have a wonderful holiday and a happy new year.
Is he stepping?
Thank you, Mayor, and happy holidays to everybody there. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, ordinance 2021-27, Mr. LaConte.
This is an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey. 27, right?
Yes.
Repealing Article 4 titled the Municipal Court, Section 2-21 to 2-21.8 of the revised general ordinances of the Township of Chatham and replacing with a new Article 4 titled the Joint Municipal Court, Sections 2-21 to 2-34.
Okay, Mr. Cruz, could you just give a brief explanation of this before we open the public hearing?
Yes, Mayor. As you will recall, several meetings ago, you adopted, authorized a new joint municipal court shared services agreement, which takes effect on January 1st of 2022. The purpose of this ordinance is to align that agreement with an ordinance of how the joint municipal court will work. It's in my judgment, a housekeeping item to align the two. One of the big changes, as you mentioned earlier, was that one of the municipalities left the joint court. So that is reflected again in this ordinance. But it's basically making the two, the shared services agreement and the ordinance, jive with each other.
Thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing for 2021-27. No one? Okay, then we will close the public hearing for 2021-27. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, let's go to a vote.
Mrs. Vandaco?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Abbott?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, 2021-28.
This is an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, repealing sections 30-142 to 30-142.7 of the revised general ordinances of the Township of Chatham, titled Requirements for Developments, increasing the Township's growth share obligation for affordable housing.
Okay. Mr. Cruz, can I get a brief explanation of this one?
Yes, Mayor. As you also mentioned earlier today, the township does now have a final judgment of compliance and repose. And so it is an appropriate time to do some cleanup of these affordable housing ordinances. Growth share was a methodology used to comply or meet your affordable housing obligation. Growth share has been voided by the New Jersey Supreme Court. It's no longer in effect. And in fact, your new plan supersedes that ordinance. So while arguably the ordinances you've already adopted would have superseded this ordinance and repealed it by implication, I thought it'd be fair, the appropriate way would just to be remove it off the books so that there is no confusion that growth share is not applicable in Chatham Township.
Okay. Let's open the public hearing for ordinance 2021-28. Let's close the public hearing for 2021-28. Do I have a motion to approve? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, let's take to a vote.
Mrs. Vandaco?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Abbott?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes. Okay,
Passes.
thank you. 21-29.
Make sure you speak up when you're
That would help.
Yeah, just make sure everything on the recording. We don't need that, we just need you to speak up. I don't know if you want to put the microphone back somewhere.
Yeah, put the microphone on first.
I'm sorry.
So ordinance 2021-29, an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, repealing section 30-79.4 titled Affirmative Marketing of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township.
Mr. Cruz?
Yes, Mayor, this falls into the same category as the prior ordinance. As part of your affordable housing process, you did adopt a new affordable housing marketing plan. Essentially, a marketing plan is how the township reaches the individuals that are in need of affordable housing. It is part of the uniform housing affordability controls, and so that is the tool that the township uses to market the affordable units in town, the qualification process, the advertising process, which is all administered by your administrative agent, your affordable housing administrative agent. This is a new ordinance that was adopted during this period. The old ordinance should be repealed just to, again, make sure that there's no inconsistency in having two ordinances on the books that attempt to do similar things.
Thank you. Let's open the public hearing. Anybody on Zoom? Nope. Okay, then we're going to close the public hearing. Can I get a motion to approve 2021-29?
So moved.
Discussion? Vote.
Mrs. Fundaco?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Abbott?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. 2021-30.
An ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, repealing sections 30-143 to 30-143.10 of the revised general ordinances of the Township of Chatham titled Development Fee Ordinance.
Okay. Mr. Cruz?
Yes, Mayor. The ordinance being repealed here is the old development fee ordinance. It was adopted in the mid-2000s or so, 2005, 2008 period. That ordinance was never implemented as part of this new round or this third round agreement. You did adopt a new development fee ordinance. So again, it's removing the older ordinance from the books, so there's only one ordinance and avoids confusion.
Okay, thank you. Let's open the public hearing. Anybody on Zoom?
Nope.
Okay, we're closing the public hearing. Can I get a motion to approve 2021-30?
So moved.
I'll take that as a first and a second.
If one of you can, officially second it. Celeste, if you can.
Second.
Thank you. Yeah, I just need to make sure that I have something, a projected voice on the recording.
Okay, I assume there's no discussion? So-
Actually,
oh.
there's brief discussion on this one. I'll be super brief, but maybe Albert can clarify. Is this in any way related to the next thing that's coming up right after this, or are they just sort of similar? Like, this has to do with the fee ordinance that was already adopted a ways back, we're just cleaning that up, or is it intertwined with this other thing?
No, it's as you described the first. This repeals what was done 2005, 2008 period. That ordinance was never implemented. You're repealing that, so you only have one ordinance on the books for development fees, which is what was adopted, I guess, at the end of 2019. Okay, the next I would consider this ordinance, again, administrative, not substantive. The next ordinance, I will point out to you that has a substantive provision in it. That's not a cleanup, that is a change.
Now, if I can quick add to that, when the development fee ordinance was adopted in 2019, The intention at the time was to repeal this one and replace it with the one that was adopted 2 years ago. But somehow in the codification process, that didn't get picked up by the codification company. So this is a housekeeping ordinance to just make it clear that it's the new one from 2019 that's actually in effect.
When you're saying this, you're talking about 2021-31, Greg?
No.
30.
So 2021-30
Okay.
repeals the ordinance, officially formally appeals the ordinance that was done in 2008 and 2009 and was meant to be replaced by the adoption of a 2019 ordinance that accomplishes the same goal of setting, so we technically have two ordinances on the books.
Just floating around.
Yeah, it's making it clear that the 2009 ordinance was repealed when it was replaced by the 2019 ordinance.
Right.
Okay, great. So can we take a vote, please?
Mrs. Swindako?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Abbott?
Yes.
Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes.
I'm just debating, I know we liked having our little break last time, there's still a lot to go. Do we want to try and get through this first, or do you guys want to take a break now? Anybody needs a break now? All right, let's try and get
through this.
Yeah, let's get through this one. At least this one. Okay, ordinance 2021-31. Amending the development fee ordinance.
An ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending ordinance 2019-22, titled Development Fees, section 29-2.3A, 1A, changing the development fee from 4% to 6% when an increase in density is achieved through the grant of use variance. And as Albert has already addressed, this is the ordinance that actually serves a substantive purpose tonight.
Yep. Mr. Cruz, can you give us a brief description?
Before I do that, Mayor, Mr. LaConte, there is a minor change to this ordinance. As I understand it, there was a typographic error in the original.
Yeah, I think that little a should be a little b in the section. Was that
Right,
right?
so there's a typographic error. The subparagraph or the subreference was to A, and the original it should have been to B. Because of the way the ordinance is structured, because of the references and internal references in the ordinance, I think it's clear that it was always the intent to change subparagraph B, and I don't view that change as a substantive or material change. So when you vote on this, you'll be voting to, one, amend the ordinance to include that A to B, and either in favor of or against this ordinance. Now going to what Mr. Hamilton asked before, yes, this is an amendment to the current affordable housing ordinance that was adopted in 2016. This particular amendment is to a discrete type of matter. The current ordinance allows for a 4% development fee on the equalized assessed value of the improvement to be the basis for the calculation of the affordable housing development fee. This ordinance recommends that it be changed from 4 to 6%. Interestingly enough, in the ordinance that you just repealed from 2005-8, it was 6%. Somehow it became 4% in this ordinance. When the Affordable Housing Committee was doing its review, it picked this up and it recommended that this increase be made consistent with what was your then ordinance. And it only applies where there is a use variance increasing the density. So it's an application that would be before the Board of Adjustment, and the board would consider whether or not to increase or change the density for a particular property, not a whole zone, but a particular property where the application is before the board to increase the density for that property. And so that in that instance, it would be 6% and not 4%.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's open the public hearing for 2021-31.
Thank you, Dan Miller, Green Village. I believe that this should not be approved. I think 4% is probably too much and punitive upon, property owners' rights. And I think that should be seriously considered, the impact on people who own properties who may or may not be able to improve them. I understand the purpose of this, but I don't believe that the full impact is being considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Okay. Nobody else on public hearing? Then I'll close the public hearing for 2021-30. Do I have this one is, oh, well, I marked the wrong one. Okay, 31. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve 2021-31?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Yes, second.
Discussion. Well, let's go in order. Mrs. Abbott, do you have any comments regarding 2021-31?
No comments. I think it should be, the 6% is reasonable and is bringing it back to where it was before. So I think we should vote for it. The developer's fee of 6%.
Mrs. Van Daken? Did you have any comments?
No.
Okay. Mr. Hamilton?
Yeah, I think I commented on this when it was introduced at the last meeting, and I won't belabor the point. So then it's my understanding that this is a sort of solution seeking a problem. Not exactly the right cliche, but this is a type of application that has, as far as I know, never actually granted in the township. And I think I have a personal problem with raising a fee unnecessarily, adding to the statute book unnecessarily, and placing some sort of what I view as potential incentive out there to grant this sort of variance because you can get a higher fee for it. So, personally, I'm not in favor of this ordinance.
Okay. The development fee ordinance it was established in 2008, 2009. They did set it at 6% at the time. I was here for the discussions when they reestablished the new development fee ordinance. It was 4%. There was no discussion on that. The discussion was really on the category A, which is the 1.5% on residential development, because that really was the concern that the individual homeowners were going to be impacted. Whereas when you're talking about increased density, you're talking about and actually even on that side, it's been developers for the most part. I believe Mr. Hoffman had a number of about 80% were borne by developers, the fee. In this case, even though it's not applying in this term, the reason it's not applying at this time is because of our third round agreement. So we have a town-wide set-aside of 15 or 20% affordable housing that has to be built with any increase in density. Once upon a time when they put in Rosevale or Melrose Place and no affordable housing was put in, the 6% fee would apply, and it would give a negotiating room with the developer to make sure that they're either, a developer comes in and gets a property that's zoned for 6 single-family homes and all of a sudden puts in 50 townhomes. Clearly there's value created. And the reason I like the 6% is I want to make sure that that developer is doing stuff to help the town, to mitigate their impact when they increase density. So even though it's not going to apply until 2025, when our third round is up, I think it's important to put in place. I think it was what was intended once upon a time. It wasn't discussed or analyzed at the last meeting when they put the 2019-28. It is a component, but they set it at 4%, and that 4% was not discussed at all. So I support the 6% increase.
Mayor, just one clarification on what you said. This ordinance takes effect if you adopt it now or upon in accordance with law. It doesn't take effect in 2025. It takes effect now.
Oh, absolutely. I'm talking about when Mr. Hamilton was saying that it doesn't really apply to properties in town, or it only applies to anything less than 6 units based on the density in the for the set-aside?
Well, right, the mandatory set-aside applies to 6 units to an acre or more, and that also applies now. This tries to capture a gap from anything above 1 to 5.
Yes, but that was part of the third round agreement, and at
Yes.
July 1st, 2025, we no longer have builder's remedy immunity. So I assume at that point, all bets are off, and we don't have a set aside, unless we negotiate something beforehand.
No, that ordinance would remain in effect.
Now that the set
Until it's
aside,
repealed. The 20% set aside would remain in effect until it's repealed. It's not just limited to the settlement agreement. It remains in effect until it's repealed.
really? Okay, that's a twist that I didn't have. Okay,
It's an ordinance, so once it passes, it passes. It's there until it gets repealed.
well, the whole housing element and fair share plan, it lapses once the agreement's over, so I don't understand that concept,
I
but
think as part of the.
I'm more
part of the
comfortable having,
Settlement, we agreed to adopt the ordinance. The
Yeah.
ordinance is here forever once it's adopted.
I'm more comfortable having it in place either way. Okay, so was there any additional comments, anything we didn't cover? Okay, thank you. Can we go for a vote?
Mrs. Fondaco?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
No.
Deputy Mayor Abbott?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. We're still good moving forward? Okay. 2021-32.
This is an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, providing for the operation and maintenance of the Township of Chatham Water Pollution Control System as a self-liquidating municipal public utility. This also
Mr.
falls
Cruz?
under the housekeeping category.
Okay. Mr. Cruz, do you want to give a brief explanation? Or is that somebody else's?
I think perhaps Mr. Hoffman would be better suited than I, but I'll be happy if he's not able to.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is, what this does is we have two sewer utilities at the moment. This ordinance would merge them into one sewer utility. We had two sewer utilities for a period of time because we were paying off the debt for sewer utility 2. That debt has been paid off, and the long-term plan was to merge the sewer utilities into one, basically into one unit, so that would become effective with the first of the year. This was approved, permission was granted by the Division of Local Government Services. That was our request. We had to approach the Division of Local Government Services. They approved that, so this ordinance helps to put the merger into effect. Longer term, this means that we don't have to do 2 audits on our sewer utilities. We only do 1, and it will save us staff hours in the future.
Okay. Let's open the public hearing for 2021-32. Anybody on Zoom? Okay. We're going to close the public hearing on 2021-32. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Can we get no discussion? Can we get a vote, please?
Mrs. Fondaco?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Abbott?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, 2021-33.
An ordinance to provide minimum and maximum ranges for the compensation for certain positions of employment in the Township of Chatham in the County of Morris, New Jersey, effective January 1, 2021.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is this ordinance. What it just does is it changes the title for somebody in the sewer utility. The new title would become wastewater treatment facility manager. That is the only change. There's no change in the range or anything like that. It's just a change in title. This is something that had been discussed in, I believe it was in August, so that a member of the staff would have the opportunity to join management after leaving the union.
Okay. Public hearing. Can we open the public hearing, please? If anybody wants to speak on 2021-33. I assume we have nobody, so I will close the public hearing. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
No discussion? Then let's call for a vote.
Mrs. Fundaco?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Abbott?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay.
We gotta move for our 5-minute break.
Yeah, this one might be a little bit longer. Okay. We are going to take a 5-minute break, and we will be back. So we are up to ordinance 2021-34.
An ordinance of the Township of Chatham in the County of Morris, New Jersey, regarding no parking regulations on certain streets. And just as a reminder, this is the amended version from the last time. And on the official version, I do have 2 typos that were fixed. On the first page for the Lafayette Avenue regulations, changing it to Maple Street. The old ordinance previously adopted had Maple Avenue instead, so we've updated it to correctly show Maple Street.
Okay. Mr. Hoffman, can you provide some information about this ordinance?
No.
Would you
Yes.
provide some information?
No, absolutely. This is an ordinance that was brought forward by residents on Longwood Avenue, and it had to do with high school students that were parking and not parking properly. In order to make sure that the problem wasn't moved from one street to another, a more holistic look was taken, and a series of streets were included to have no parking amended, so that the no parking would be from 7 a.m. until 1 p.m. Currently on several streets it's 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. After the ordinance was introduced, there was a survey letter that was sent out to the residents of Longwood Avenue, Lafayette Avenue, Fairview Avenue, Maple Street, Florham Street, Pine Street, Buttonwood Lane, Lenape Trail, School Avenue, Whitman Drive, Williams Road, and Yarmouth. So we received approximately 100 responses. 80. There was about 80 people responded. A little over 80 people responded affirmatively that they were in favor of changing the no parking times from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. so that the no parking on those streets would be from 7 a.m. until 1 p.m. Currently they are 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. And there was 17 people that were wanted to keep the parking regulations as they are at the moment. So it's basically over 80% of the people that were surveyed are in favor of making the change.
Were there any trends on the 17 that didn't want to keep them as is?
I'm sorry?
Any trends on the 17 that didn't want to, did you have them all in one block or anything like that?
No,
Okay.
there was a couple on different streets. I'd prefer not to name the streets, but there was not one block or one particular area where there was where people didn't want it.
Okay. Okay, let's open the public hearing for 2021-34, parking regulations. Anybody on Zoom?
Nope.
Okay. I'll close the public hearing. Can I get a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just a couple of really minor things. First of all, I think there's a typo in paragraph 1. Did you mention that already, Greg? Just a straight up typo. It says prohibited parking at all lines.
At all times, yes. That's the problem when you convert from a PDF to a Word doc, so I'll fix that. All times upon, it should be times.
And then the Lafayette time, specifically the 4 p.m. time, I assume that's already the law? We're not making a change there?
Yeah, those were unchanged.
Okay, and then just, I think the final thing is, minutia here, but is there a difference between entire length and like Williams, it says, well, a bunch of streets say entire length, and Williams, it says Longwood to Crestwood. Isn't that the entire length of Williams? I don't care, I just wondered if there's a difference in why it says that way.
Substantively, no, but the Williams Road, for whatever it may be worth, that's not changing, or at least as far as the length. For whatever reason, when that regulation went into effect, someone decided to do Longwood Avenue to Crestwood Drive rather than saying entire length.
Okay. So we have the motion, the second, we did discussion, and can we have the vote?
Wait,
Sorry.
one more point. We had discussed at the last meeting, I think, the question of signage, and I thought there was going to be some follow-up on that.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. We did, there's going to be approximately 140 sign changes. We identified the funds. It's about $3,200. But the police went out and they surveyed the locations for where the current signs are, where signs would be needed, and we have those locations, and we've identified the funds where we would be able to pay for the signs, and we'll be able to order them tomorrow if this is adopted, and the ordinance would take effect once the signs are in place.
I assume there's some sort of standard. I would kind of defer to the police on this, the minimum number of signs to make sure you're adequately putting people on notice they can't park there without it becoming an eyesore. I mean, 140 signs sounds like a lot of signs.
Well, it's for
spread all over the.
It's for all of the, yes, it's for all of the streets, and then there's a couple that when they looked at the signs, the police and the DPW, they noticed that the sign posts needed to be replaced. So there's also going to be some replacement signage and stuff in reserve, and we're going to wind up. We know that some of the signs will be vandalized, so we will have a couple of additional signs. So there's going to be 140 signs plus 30 new sign posts for this, and then we will be able to implement it. But it's for all locations, all streets.
Does this go into effect as soon as the signs go up?
Yes, it will, because the ordinance has been adopted, but it can't be enforced until the signs are in place.
And then they go up, and people don't realize it, and they get a warning from the police or something like that. Probably.
Yeah, that's what we'll wind up doing. There'll be an educational period where they'll say that the signs have changed, but eventually there will be tickets if people don't follow up.
Okay. Can we get a vote, please?
Mrs. Fondaco?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Abbott?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay.
There's some hand that started.
The next three ordinances establishing the subcommittees. Originally, the plan was to try and have those subcommittees come in at the request of the Township committee members to come in on December 2nd, but there was difficulty with getting confirmation with everybody's schedules. So the intent was to have them come in today, but unfortunately, Mrs. Felice, who had a lot of the questions for the committees, was not available today. So we're going to move these, we're going to table these, but I do want to open up the public hearing for each one and allow for any discussion. So ordinance 2021-35, establishing the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee.
I do have one person online.
Okay.
Dan?
Yeah, Dan Miller, Green Village. I'm certainly not in favor of these committees or, you know, for numerous reasons, but I'm gonna bring up one of the main reasons because it was a topic for tonight. If you're looking at hiring professionals to do the master plan, then those professionals should be bringing you information on where affordable housing could be appropriate. And then it's up to our planning board, our township committee, so on and so forth, to make those decisions. You know, a lot of times, you know, we see these committees created, and they're more just, you know, they're more of a political entity than they are a substantive entity. And I think more government doesn't help anybody. The other thing is I haven't heard, and I may have missed it, what are the budgets for any of these committees? Because that's also an impact to the taxpayer for non-professional opinions where we're hiring professionals to give us opinions. So could I be told what the budget for this particular committee would be? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Miller. And just to answer that question, there is no budget for the 3 committees. Okay, was there anybody else for the public hearing? Okay. I guess.
Can I comment on this?
Well, we know we're tabling them, so let's do the motion the second to table, and then we can discuss, and at that point, we'll have comments, okay? Do I have a motion to table this ordinance?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Abbott, did you say you wanted?
Okay. There's the idea that these are more government, and then there's the idea that these committees are for public input. And Mr. Miller, and in general, we've been saying public input is a good thing, so that the township is informed. That's why we have advisory committees like the Rec Advisory Committee, the Colony Advisory Committee. It's not more government, it's citizens volunteering with no budget to give their input in a group because they become experts in one subject area, so that they're not just coming online like Mr. Miller or in this room by themselves. It's nice to have a group that's interested in one common area of making the town better. So it's absolutely not more government, it's just more citizen input and does not have political implications at all.
Ms. Fondacco, did you want to comment at all?
I can only agree with Kathy again.
Thanks.
Mr. Hamilton?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm the liaison to the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, and I've very much valued their contribution to looking at, I mean, they're looking at other towns, what are the best practices. They're looking at what we did in the 3rd round and what we can improve. Those folks also act as ambassadors in their community, so they're available to answer questions. You know, they've been spending the year getting up to speed on everything and drilling down in a lot of detail, but they're available to their communities to answer questions. I just remember when, you know, in 2018, when the Dixie Dale and the skate park site were being discussed and the room was packed full of people, and you know, the municipal building was being looked at for affordable housing, and there was tremendous expertise in the community, folks that came up and spoke, and they had a lot of great information. And this Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, not all those folks can participate as volunteers. They don't necessarily have the time, but this group can do that outreach to get that professional input that's for free and that's available to the community to supplement our wonderful professionals that we rely on. So I'm very appreciative of all of that they've contributed to date so far. Okay, so if nobody else has any additional points we haven't heard, then let's go to a vote.
Mrs. Fondacco?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Abbott?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, so likewise, 2021-36 is going to be tabled, but let's open up the public hearing first.
Okay, Dan?
Yep, Dan Miller, Green Village. Once again, I will respectfully disagree, and I do believe that all three of these boards, committees, if you will, are an extra layer of government, not necessarily including all the people with expertise, but political patronage, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. Anybody else? Okay, so we're closing the public hearing, and I will take a motion to table 2021-36.
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Well, again, these are volunteers trying to help the businesses in our town.
So you're looking for them?
Yes. These are volunteers on this committee, and they are not on any budget. They just go around and try to find out, help our community and the businesses in the community by getting their advertisements out free of charge, usually on Facebook, or maybe they make up pamphlets to let the community know about these businesses that they might not know about. And I just can't imagine why anybody would not want to have that help. Both the community and the businesses.
I agree, Celeste, with you.
Any other comments? Okay. I mean, I will just add, there's this notion that, and I really don't know where it comes from, that advisory committees represent big government. And I really don't understand that because to me, the lack of, or the discouragement of residents telling them not to participate, you do not want to engage them, you do not want their expertise, you do not, to me, that's the definition of big government and overreach. So these ordinances do the opposite. They bring in the community, and then the way they're drafted, they rotate the positions so that allows for some political influence without summarily just staffing or stocking the whole thing with people who are going to vote one way or another. And they, at the end of the day, they're advisory, so they have no power and they have no budget.
Stacy, you're saying that they're, the way they're staffed, they're less likely to be political. I know the Affordable Housing Committee goes by voting district or just by neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Do the other committees go by neighborhood in terms of their membership?
No, the Affordable Housing Advisory was a little unique in terms of wanting to make sure that, again, there is a bit of that not in my backyard, and we want to make sure there was representation throughout the community. And again, that each one of those individuals serves as an ambassador to their community to explain what's going on and to keep people updated. Okay, so we're on 2021-36, establishing the Business Advisory Committee. I have a motion and a second to table. And we are done with discussion. Can I get a vote?
Mrs. Fondaco?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Abbott?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes.
By the way, these three I neglected to mention. So when we found out that Mrs. Felice couldn't be here today, we decided to move the presentation. So those three committees will come in, assuming the second meeting is confirmed for January 18th. Our meetings are moving to Tuesdays, but that will be discussed later. So assuming that meeting is on January 18th, they will be coming in the second meeting. So the first meeting is a reorganization meeting, and those three committees will come in to present and answer any questions on January 18th / whatever the second meeting date winds up being. Okay, the next ordinance 21-37, establishing the diversity committee, also to be tabled, but let's open the public hearing.
Hey, Dan?
Yeah, Dan Miller, Green Village. Well, I won't repeat what I've said before, but I am glad that all three of these are being tabled so that they can be re-examined, under the next administration coming in January, and I hope a good, thorough look will be given to them, by all the committee members who will be sitting at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Okay, anybody else for public hearing?
That's it.
Okay. Do I have a motion to table ordinance 2021-37?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? I would just say likewise that the diversity committee has done a great job, and they're very enthusiastic about some of the stuff that they want to do next year, so hopefully you'll get to hear them when they come in on January 18th.
And I'll just also say that it's not a good idea to silence enthusiastic volunteers in a community that mean good for the community and that have no personal self-interest except the kind of self-interest that comes with personal, feeling of expertise that they can contribute to everyone.
Was there any other discussion? We had the motion and the second on this one, right?
Yeah, we just,
Okay. Any other discussion on 2021-37? Okay, can we get a vote, please?
Mrs. Fundaco?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Abbott?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, that was the tough part of the agenda. Okay, we're on to the consent agenda. Mr. LeConte?
Just for the record, number 9 will be taken out since that dealt with the contract for master plan updates, and yeah, that'll be dealt with sometime next year, hopefully.
Okay.
So what we still have on the agenda are Resolution 2021-281 budget transfers, 2021-284 payment of bills, 2021-285 receipt of reports, 2021-286 approving meeting minutes, 2021-287 approving executive session minutes, 2021-288 refunding overpayment of taxes, 2021-289 outside lien redemption, 2021-290 approving fire department memberships, 2021-292 appointing member to the library board of trustees, 2021-293 opt-in for opioid class action lawsuit, and 2021-294 appointing DPW employee.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve? Actually, I do have a question. 2021-291. I thought you had two versions. One was, we're not rejecting we're going to let those roll into the new year. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Remind me, did we make that motion, and then if there is any, I realize it's a consent agenda, but is there any opportunity to discuss the consent agenda as a whole? Or we wanted to do that, did we have to pull stuff up?
If you have questions about a resolution, you can ask them.
Yeah, did we do that before or after the vote?
If you want to pull something out, you would say.
Yeah, if you want to pull something out for a separate vote, we can do that now.
Okay, I just wanted to, I guess so, I'm interested in just hearing 30 seconds from Albert about the opioid litigation opt-in and what exactly that means. So I don't know if that requires us to pull it out.
Well,
Or you can just tell us.
Yeah, if you want, you can have that answered now, and then if you feel compelled to ask for a separate vote, we can deal with that later.
Okay.
Actually, it's, Mr. Cruz can answer that, but this came from me. There was an email from the county administrator, Mr. Benani, that I forwarded to the Township Committee. I did that earlier this afternoon, but they asked 17 municipalities in Morris Township to consider passing this resolution for the class action lawsuit. Morris County is going to be filing a motion, but they wanted to have unanimity among the municipalities in the county about that. So some of our sister municipalities have already passed the motion. The prorated share for this, if the litigation is successful, would be $151,227. But there was this is based on an email dated December 2nd, where it was sent to the municipalities that had over 10,000 residents, and there was a notice from the Attorney General's office. I can read the one paragraph if you're interested.
Sure.
Okay, sure. The County of Morris and other political subdivisions within the state of New Jersey are parties to litigation against 3 large pharmaceutical distributors and 1 pharmaceutical manufacturer. By now, all the municipalities in Morris County with more than 10,000 residents should have received a notice from the New Jersey Attorney General regarding the settlement of this litigation, and the estimated funds available if each municipality were to elect to participate in the settlement agreement. The amount of estimated available funds dramatically increases if all the counties and municipalities with populations of more than 10,000 residents opts to participate in the settlement. Specifically, if we can achieve full participation, the approximate recovery from your municipality and the County of Morris is as follows. And so it lists the 17 municipalities, and it just talks about some other steps that the County of Morris wanted to take. So.
And Albert, do you have any thoughts on this? Have you reviewed this?
Yes, let me just make sure I can get on, oh, I'm sorry, hold on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just got kicked off the screen. But yes, I have reviewed it. As Mr. Hoffman said, this is a class action against the various opioid manufacturers. You've probably seen news articles on this. It is being led by the Attorney General, but the total amount of the recovery, as Mr. Hoffman said, depends upon the number of municipalities that participate. Morris County is encouraging all municipalities within the county in excess of 10,000 people to participate. So the more municipalities participate, the greater the share of the state and the individual municipalities, and the monies to be used for opioid type treatments.
And prevention? It was my understanding.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Treatment and prevention.
Right, yeah, so I was just wondering if maybe I'm, it's an occupational hazard, as you know, Albert, but, I wasn't talking about so much about what the effect of it is just that, you're comfortable that, we're not waiving anything, or by entering into settlement, I can't really envision anything, but that's just like what sort of pops, my knee-jerk reaction is when I see entering into a settlement. You're comfortable with the terms of the settlement, and...
Yeah, no, you can't waive the rights of individual citizens if that's what you're concerned about. This is much like the tobacco settlements that were entered, 20 years ago. A pot of money is created and then various programs to assist with opioid treatment, rehabilitation, similar to the tobacco industry settlements of 20 or 25 years ago.
But I was talking about our rights as a municipality. They would be, in exchange for whatever payout we get from this, those whatever rights we might have.
Yes, you would be waiving them. What rights you would have in addition to this money, I don't know. But yes, you're going to get money and you're going to give up certain rights.
And you're satisfied as our attorney that this is a good deal?
Well, I don't know if it's a good deal or not, but it's the Attorney General that has spearheaded this. You don't have an individual litigation. This is really opting in to be part of the settlement class. Again, it's similar to a class action. You opt in, you opt out. If you opt in, you get the same terms and conditions as the rest of the class. If you opt out, you're on your own to pursue whatever remedies you think you have. Typically, you opt in simply because someone else is carrying that load for you.
Okay. Did you want to pull it out for further discussion, or you're good? Okay. Do we have a motion?
Not yet.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I second.
Mrs. Fondaco?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Abbott?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. On the non-consent agenda, we have Resolution 2021-295, authorizing a second amendment to the Affordable Housing Agreement. Did I just read most of that for Mr. O'Conte?
Yes, this is a resolution of the Township of Chatham, County of Marston, State of New Jersey, authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign a second amendment to the development agreement with Walters Cornerstone Development, Inc. for the development of 522 Southern Boulevard.
Okay. Mr. Cruz, did you want to provide a brief description?
Yes. As you know, the township has acquired title to 522 Southern Boulevard. As part of acquiring title, the township performed, or really the developers, Walters, Cornerstone Development LLC, hired an environmental consultant to evaluate the environmental conditions at the property. There is an underground storage tank which has to be removed and remediated. There is some asbestos in some parts of the building that have to be remediated before the building is demolished. And as you know, there is a Shell service station on the corner adjacent to this property. There will be testing of the groundwater to ensure that there is no contamination coming from the Shell station. The environmental consultant recommended an escrow to be held from the money that the township paid. That escrow is $390,000 to remediate those areas. The township and the developer Walters Cornerstone have agreed, or would agree through this second amendment, that in the event there are excess costs than $390,000, that the two would share them equally. So that the burden would not fall on either party. There have been negotiations surrounding that, and this seemed like a reasonable compromise as to protect the interests of both parties in the event that the escrow is not sufficient.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2021-295?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, can we get a roll call vote?
Mrs. Fondaco?
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Abbott?
Yes.
And Mayor Ewald?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, up for discussion now, the 2022 meeting schedule.
Yes, Mayor, I circulated to the Township Committee a proposed meeting schedule. It was proposed that we move our meetings from the second and fourth Thursday to the second and fourth Tuesday. So I prepared a schedule based on that and circulated it. In January, we would do January 18th, which is actually a third Thursday. That was selected rather than the 25th, mainly so that for purposes of the bill list, that way we can get our bills paid and not have the lights go out. And then starting in February, we would go to the second and fourth Tuesday schedule. The proposal has one meeting in July and one meeting in August, which is something that we've done regularly for the past several years. If the committee wanted to add extra meetings, we could, and if there was need for special meetings due to emergent needs, we could always do that as well. One change that I realized at the end of the workday was for the month of November. November 8th is actually the general election because of that whole wackadoo thing of the Tuesday after the first Monday. So normally it's the first Tuesday in November, but November 8th is election day. So a couple proposals would be either move the first meeting in November to November 1st, which would wind up being only a week after our second October meeting. I don't know that you'd want to necessarily do that. We could have meetings on the 15th and the 29th, which would be the 3rd and 5th Tuesdays. We could do just one meeting on the 29th, but whatever we do, I wanted the committee to, weigh in and give me direction so I know what to prepare for the reorg.
So the big question is, well, if anybody has any concerns with anything else that was explained, but the big question otherwise is November. We can't have a meeting on the 8th, and do we want just the 15th in November, or the 15th and the 29th, and December is just one meeting?
Yeah, and in December, we can add 2 meetings as well, because the 13th is the second Tuesday. The 27th, 2 days after Christmas would be the second meeting if we do 2, which is, holiday travel time. Yeah.
Probably November 29th too.
Yeah, so I mean, if you want, we can plan on the 15th, and then if we need a second meeting in November, we can always add that as needed. But I just wanted to get some kind of a feel for the committee's inclination.
Okay. I'm fine with November 15th and just leaving it at that.
Yeah, so I'll do the 15th of November, and December 13th I'll keep that, and then January 3rd is what we'll set for the reorganization for the following year.
Okay. Mr. Hoffman, did you have a preference? Because you got to manage the schedule.
Yeah, no, the schedule as amended would be okay, because my concern was to make sure we were paying our bills on time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, and of course, at this point, we have no way of knowing what kind of business will come up late in the year, next year to, hopefully we won't need extra meetings, but we never know. I think it was last year or the year before, we had 7 meetings by the end of February,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, maybe we won't have to have executive meetings anymore.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Okay. Wonderful, we are set, so we are moving our meetings to Tuesdays.
And that was the other reason that I wanted this to be publicly discussed, not that we have many people watching, but for those who are watching, I wanted them to be aware that it's moving to Tuesday night.
Okay. Thank you.
You okay with that, Ed?
Okay, so we've got our second hearing of citizens. The same rules apply. I'm going to open the hearing of citizens. Mr. LaConte, do we have anybody on Zoom? Okay. Seeing no one, I'm going to close the hearing of citizens. We don't need to have another executive session, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Before we adjourn, it's my last moment. And I'd like to just, say a wish that in order to encourage people to run for office, that the members of this committee and even former members you can do positive endorsements, but I just really think it's extremely discouraging for people who are former colleagues trying to work together suddenly write letters to the editor, especially last weekend before an election day, and say preposterous things about me or any other candidate, because we all live in the same town, and we see each other in ShopRite, we see each other at Colony Pool, we see each other paying our tax bills, we see each other at Girl Scout meetings or whatever. I just think that we should stop attacking each other, because people think something is really wrong in the town, and there is basically very little wrong in this town. And people are bringing the national political divide right here because people are watching their TV or their social media way too much and getting all excited and then thinking that one side represents whoever is in Congress or someone on this level of government is trying mostly to do things. There's just not that much division, and it's created artificially because people have an appetite for it, and then I see ridiculous things written about myself that just literally aren't true. Or some slant, like saying, this is her 4th try for office. Well, yeah, one of them I got in, and the person who's writing it actually ran themselves and lost. Things like that. It's ridiculous. Stop it. That's all I can say. Be inviting to be participating in our democracy, and that means not trashing your colleagues. You can support them, but if you don't want to endorse them, do not write anything negative. I think it's really ugly, and it's just not what Chatham Township deserves. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
And I would just like to say thank you, Stacy, for having served as the mayor for the last 6 months.
stepping up, we need the mayor, so.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.